All right. Welcome to another edition of Shabbat Lounge. This is Matt.
And Jake here.
Coming to you with another Torah portion. And Jake, what are we on here?
This is week 49, and I believe it is called Kititzi, like the fly, the tsetse fly.
Teensy tiny fly?
There's a thing called a tsetse fly, and that's what I always think of with this one. But no, really this is when you go.
What's a tsetse fly?
It's like a little gnat kind of thing.
Oh. Huh. I don't like those.
No, it's bad news.
Yeah. Okay. So when you go. Deuteronomy 21:10 through 25:17.
Right.
So just four chapters. Pretty short and sweet.
That's right. So you can check out Sabbath Lounge and go to Torah portions there on the top, and you'll be able to find exactly this information.
Right. And just Google Sabbath Lounge. That's the easiest way to find us. And we appreciate it if you share this, like it, tell someone else about it.
That's right.
All right, so Jake, we'll get right into it. And so there's this concept in here at the beginning about how to be blameless and how to be like Abraham, how to be blameless, perfect, how to live out this love of people, community, how to take care of children and animals. And when I think of Abraham, I think of hospitality, and that is something that you see in the beginning of this Torah portion about taking care of people and just basically good manners.
Right.
Doing a lot of the things that probably most people in Western society just grew up. This is how your parents taught you to do things.
Yeah, I mean, at least that's how it used to be, right?
Yeah. So, and we'll go into a little more detail with this. And once again, we keep coming on this. So, Jake, what is this that we did a while back?
So we did an episode about Christians following Torah, because we get a lot of kickback of, oh, you don't got to keep the Torah anymore, and that's for them Jews. And so we just want to in this episode here, we can just point out that, well, you're keeping a lot of Torah also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if the law has been done away with, why are you keeping all these burdensome commands?
That's right. And so in chapter 22, I think that you could talk to any Christian and as well as Torah observer, and they're going to say, finders keepers is not, that's not something that we taught children in school. They were supposed to take it to lost and found.
Right. The lost and found.
Yep. And while you're not lost and found, don't do any cross-dressing
right.
while you're there.
Although I think a lot of churches would say there's no real issue with cross-dressing. I mean, nowadays it's more in your face and it means something else. But I know back in my day, you'd have like the church put on a little play, and then
it would be funny. Maybe,
it'd be a funny guy dressed up.
But it was parody. It was not trying to be a woman. It was trying to be funny.
Right.
So, but it is different today. But still, it clearly does say no cross-dressing.
Right.
And speaking of cross-dressing, that is kind of interesting because we make a big deal out of dresses and skirts and things like that. But in reality, men back in the day, they wore dresses and skirts. So, I mean, I don't know. But I do think that it's not about if you wear a dress or skirt, but are you trying to look like a lady? Are you trying to look like a man?
This is one you kind of have to bounce off. And I know we don't like to get into cultural,
but it applies
stuff.
Here.
But it does apply here. You kind of have to go with what culturally works to fit your kind of norm of that's a man, that's a woman.
And honestly, Jake, I'd be fine wearing the old Bible garb. Whatever Abraham Moses wore. It seems like it might be pretty comfortable. So. But put something in the comment if you think that would be interesting. So it definitely would make you stand out today if you went around wearing something like that.
Yeah, your tunic with your linen boxer shorts and all that.
Yeah. So but it seemed like it had a lot of mobility. You talk a lot about, you buy a pair of pants today and it's like it's got the gusseted crotch. And you're like, I don't know what that is, but for some reason I feel like I need that. So
they sell it.
Yes, they sell it to people like me, and so with that outfit, you don't have to worry about the gusseted crotch.
Right.
If you've ever had
it's
a crotch blowout,
it's all a gusset.
Yes, if you've ever had a crotch blowout, you know what I'm talking about.
That's right.
So you don't want that.
Yeah, I think Duluth Trading has what you need, man.
Yeah, that's right. So, but we can all agree that being a virgin, don't kidnap people, don't traffic people.
Oh, don't kidnap.
Yes.
Okay, I see where you're going there.
And it is this general idea of safety. Don't marry your father's wife. Be nice to animals. Help your neighbor. Everybody agrees that those are things you should do.
I think that one's pretty specific. Don't marry your father's wife.
Yes, it's like specific.
Old Billy Bob knew they were talking about him when that happened.
Yeah, he's like, dang it.
If your name is Billy Bob, I don't mean you.
Yeah, sorry. For some reason, I went completely to the wrong... Oh, there we go. All right, so wrong place. And it goes on here. So in chapters 23 through 24, you're not supposed to have incest. You've got this idea that you are supposed to be you're supposed to show hospitality, and don't covet the possessions of others. Divorce, there's definitely divorce and remarriage rules. No partiality to the rich, which we talked about last Torah portion. Be kind, don't rip people off.
Yeah, I know people that pretty staunch on no such thing as divorce, and I agree with that. However, Yahweh is a divorcee, so there are there are some extenuating circumstances that call for a divorce.
Yeah.
But it should not be the norm. It should not be the norm. It should be very difficult for that to happen.
Easy.
High bar to reach for that.
And then Jake in Matthew 7:12, what does that say?
Always do for other people everything you want them to do for you. That is the meaning of Moses' teachings and the prophets.
So this concept, just to encourage you to realize that we do have this in common with our fellow believers about there's a lot of things that we're all following Torah with, and just not everybody acknowledges it.
Lots of overlap, yeah.
But they still do. So, and you might start an argument if you bring that up. But anyway. So then in 22:9, it talks about diverse seeds. And so we have this conversation. What is diverse seeds? So, Jake, do you think diverse seeds, does that mean that we can't plant a field, that we can't plant a garden?
Well, let me read it here real quick. You shall not sow your vineyard with diverse seeds, lest the fruit of your seed which you have sown and the fruit of your vineyards be defiled. So it's like, yeah, it kind of sounds like he's saying, don't put a bunch of different seeds out in your plot, or they'll intermingle and you'll get bad news.
Yeah, I think this one is definitely something to think about because if I believe creation, you have to look at creation, at what Yah made, and he made a diverse seed. He also made the animal kingdom diverse. And when you look at the woods in a wide open space or anywhere, that man hasn't touched, you've got mixtures of different plants and different seeds and different grasses that intermingle.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem to be a problem because we talk about different varieties of grass coexist in the same space.
Right.
And it doesn't seem to be a problem. So even though they're both types of grass, they are different and they coexist.
Yeah, so there's definitely something else kind of going on here. It's not just saying don't plant your basil next to your tomatoes. It seems to be, and I kind of, we had discussed how if you plant like two different kinds of tomatoes kind of close to each other, the seeds will cross-pollinate, or the plants will cross-pollinate, and then the seed that you plant when you harvest that tomato and you save your seeds and you go to plant that the next year, you're not going to get the same tomato. You've now, in a sense, defiled your seed, and you're not getting the same fruit as you did before.
Mm-hmm.
So there's, that might be part of the concept, but this is something, pay a little attention to it. Go do some research on it.
Yeah. And yeah, I think it could have maybe even something to do with genetic engineering. I think that that's part of what got the pre-flood world in trouble is a lot of genetic mutation things they were doing, and honestly, it's what's happening today. So this very much is applicable today, and I even have made the argument. I don't know if this is true, and if anyone else has ever thought this, let me know in the comments. But I am a naturalist in practice, and you would even say somebody that is very, I guess, a propensity to native plants. And I've thought before, this diverse seeds, does that mean that we're not supposed to take seeds and plants maybe from Africa and bring them to the United States? Is that part of what he was talking about? I don't know.
That is interesting, though,
It
because
does.
it does cause a lot of
It
trouble.
does. And mostly for animals, really.
Yeah.
But the plants sometimes it does. For instance, is it kudzu vine in the deep south that's just like swallowing the south that came from Asia. And there's duckweed and things that grow in ponds that aren't supposed to be here, and they just kind of take over and destroy and choke life out. So I think maybe that's part of it. I don't know. I don't have a good answer. Maybe someone else does.
Yeah, I think those are definitely interesting concepts to bring into the conversation, though.
Yeah. All right, Jake. What about this fringe thing?
Wear them
Fringy.
on the corners of your garb, as it says. So, the spy account, like you're talking about here, also Numbers 15, I believe it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so, just similar to Yeshua had tassels on the corners of his garb. So,
supposed to do it.
Yeah. So, explain the spy account thing.
So, you don't see that commandment until the good and bad spies, the 10 bad ones and the 2 good ones. And it's after that account when they give the bad report or the false witness about that, that's when he says, hey, you're going to have to wear these to help you remember to keep the commandments and remember who I am. And that's where we see him pop up. So that's just interesting. And Jake, there's this concept. There's actually this song I really like, and you can find it in Spotify, and it's that there are no more bastards. And I believe that there's a principle here that we find in 23:2 that there are no bastard children in Yah's kingdom. What do you think that means, Jake?
I think that it's saying that everyone in Yah's kingdom has a father.
Yeah.
Of a correct, joining.
If you are truly a bastard children and a bastard child in God's kingdom, then who's your father? Or where did you come from?
Yeah.
It wouldn't be a good thing. So, because you're saying Yah is not your father.
Exactly.
So because you read 23:2, and when you're new in Torah, you're kind of like, oh my gosh, she's so harsh. And but I think this is the principle, and this is the concept of why they couldn't serve. It's because that there shouldn't be that in the kingdom.
Yeah, and let me just read it because it'll come up in a later slide, and we'll kind of come back to this. But it says, "A bastard shall not enter into the assembly of Yahweh, even to his 10th generation shall he not enter into the assembly of Yahweh." That's pretty harsh.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Yeah, 10 generations.
Mm-hmm. And then Jake 23:24.
All right. If you go into your neighbor's vineyard, you may eat as many grapes as you like until you're full, but never put any in your basket. If you go into your neighbor's grain field, you may pick grain by hand, but never use a sickle to cut your neighbor's grain.
So Jake, explain the difference between picking grain by hand and using a sickle.
Yeah, so when you're picking it by hand, you're just grabbing something to eat. It's not like
Could you say fast food? Like
it's
going
like
through the
fat. Yeah,
drive-through.
you're going through the drive-through. Exactly. I mean, they didn't have a shop on every corner to just go grab a bite to eat.
Put
It
a
took
put it like a little hamburger Happy Meal thing or something in the comments if you heard that.
so exactly. So, but if you're going out with a sickle to your neighbor's grain, you're harvesting that, and you're going to either sell it or now you're stocking up. So
yeah.
this
Now
is
you're
like,
stealing.
yeah, you got to remember, almost everybody was starving back then,
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
time.
Yeah. Well, it was there. You know, that's a good point. You know, that's why Yeshua says, look at the birds of the air. They don't worry. They don't fret about where their food's going to come from. That he kind of made us that way. And he did put a lot of food here on the planet for us. And we are supposed to kind of be like that. But, you know, especially in the ancient world, you know, when you went on a journey, this is part of good manners. This is, once again, how do you love your neighbor? And when people quote that in the New Testament, like, you just love your neighbor. Well, this is one of the definitions of how do you love your neighbor.
It looks like this. Yeah.
You have some grain that you leave on purpose for disadvantaged people that they can come and feed themselves
and
with.
even in this case, just think about the society we live in today. If you are growing a big garden, I know lots of people grow gardens, and if some rando just started walking through your field and eating out of your field, what would you think? You get off my lawn, right?
Yeah, get off my lawn.
But this strikes me so much as a loving society, and how great this will be when it actually runs like this.
Yeah. And then we're going to see this. It shows up again. We see it with Yeshua in Matthew 12.
Right. Then on a day of worship, Yeshua walked through the grain fields. His disciples were hungry and began to pick the heads of grain to eat. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to him, "Look, your disciples are doing something that is not right to do on the day of worship."
And I believe when they say that, you know, this is a Pharisaical law that they had in place, because clearly this scripture here says it is okay to pick grain by hand when you're walking through a field. And it doesn't say anything about Sabbath. And in fact, I think you could make the argument that if you're using a sickle on the Sabbath, I think that would be wrong.
That's work, yeah.
Yeah, that's work. But just to pick it by your hand, that's just life. That's living. That's dying.
Yeah, that's kind of the difference is are you out collecting harvest, or are you just eating something?
Mm-hmm. But boy, they thought they had him there.
Yeah.
But they did not. And then in 24:19, you do see this concept of leaving the grain for the poor people. Once again, how do you love your neighbor? That's how you love your neighbor.
Yep.
Doing that.
There's a lot about grain in this one.
And, you know, growing up in West Texas, actually, I say West Texas, it's kind of like Panhandle, to be correct. But growing up in the Panhandle, it was very common when you did your planting that you might plant a parcel of land for peas or green beans. In fact, we ate a lot of black-eyed peas. I don't know if you eat black-eyed peas in Pennsylvania.
Not very often.
At
least I didn't grow up.
A lot of people up north would call it cow food.
Okay.
But we in the South, we like our black-eyed peas. And we would often grow them, and we would open up for whoever to come pick them. And that was a common practice. You know, we would do it, our neighbors would do it. And every year, I think just being good manners, you know, people did that back in the day.
Yeah,
and they may
awesome.
still do it.
Did you have a lot of people turn up?
Yeah, we did. You know, my great grandmother, you know, she always knew old so and so, you know, he grew this year, and he said we could go pick it, you know, and we'd go into his field one evening and we'd pick some. So, and people would come to our place and do it sometimes.
Yeah, nowadays that sounds like a good way to get shot.
Yeah,
to go on someone's property and start eating their food.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, that's how your community should be. You should be, you know, get to know your neighbors and know that you're not going to get shot when you walk on your property.
Yeah. So, Jake, there's this other concept of putting a ring on it, and we talked a little bit about certificate of divorce. There was some parameters for that. There's also parameters about remarrying and the husband having to die. And then, Jake, my favorite, tell us about the honeymoon.
Yeah, you get to spend a year with your spouse. No war, no going to war, no starting a war, no going to war, and you get the year off.
Yeah, think about how much better marriages would be if they could do that.
Yeah,
that would help you start off on such a better place. That you would really um, solidify your friendship during that year, and just
really learn to be that oneness that you're striving for.
Yeah. So it's a good principle, hard to do today. So thankfully in 24:26, our parents' sin doesn't condemn us, and I am so thankful for that.
Right. And this is why I wanted to bring up when we looked at the bastard child thing, and it says to the 10 generations, 10th generation, right? Mm-hmm. So you're that's a way of paying for the sins of the father, right? And so there's that concept of the sins of the father not falling on the children. But you see with David and Solomon how their sins, fell onto their children. So you kind of have to put these in the right context, because it's kind of both and. Yeah. I'm not condemned for my father's sin, but I definitely have to deal with the fact that my father was a sinner. Mm-hmm. And that stuff does pass on to me. The consequences of that does pass on to me.
Yeah. And this should be 24:16. Ooh. There's not a 24:26. Doesn't exist.
Okay.
Not in Deuteronomy. So 24:16.
Good catch.
And then we've got Messiah here in 20 now. Again,
yep,
we
21:22,
21:22, and then 25:3. We've got those connections. So Jake, tell us about these connections.
So 21:22 says, "Cursed is one who's hung on a tree," and then 25 verse 3 talks about the stripes, which is the lashes, and you couldn't give someone as a penalty more than 40 lashes because that would be overkill for any wrongdoing you could do that wasn't death. Mm-hmm. As a punishment. So that's kind of the concept there. It's the punishment fits the crime.
Yeah. And we have seen some people recently talking about this idea of the traditional cross, that maybe he was crucified a little bit different than the way most of us have considered it. Maybe he literally was hung on a tree. And it's something to definitely consider and think about. It wouldn't surprise me at this point that the way he died on the cross may not be exactly the way it's been portrayed. Or it may be exactly like that.
Yeah, it's hard to tell because of how many falsehoods have been passed on. So.
Yeah. But anyway, definitely not.
It's even if it is the way we've always learned it to be, that concept of hung on a tree is still there.
Yeah, terrible. And then 25:4, don't muzzle your ox.
Don't muzzy the ox. That's right.
And then 1 Corinthians 9:4 kind of repeats and echoes the same thing, and that got it from 25:4.
Yeah, so that says, have we not power to eat and to drink? So, yeah, one of the things I think about with this is, you ever hear the saying, I like my way of doing something better than your way of doing nothing?
No.
Well, it's the idea of if you're going to come criticize the way I'm doing it, at least I'm doing something to affect the change, right? Mm-hmm. You're sitting over there just Monday morning quarterbacking me, Yeah. So if you're going to... So that kind of, to me, fits into this idea of don't muzzle the ox while it's treading the grain. I'm doing something. Stop trying to stop me from doing it because you don't like the way I'm doing it, unless you can come up with a better way of doing it. Mm-hmm. It's that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's good. And then we get to this crazy nuclear bomb thing going off here. And Jake, explain what's happening here with this.
So we're talking about the Amalekites, or some say Amalekites. I've heard that phrasing also. I say Amalekite. But anyway, so the descendants of Amalek were the grandsons of Esau, and they were told, hey, destroy all these folks. And there's the concept of Jacob I loved and Esau I hated. And this was interesting because this was before Esau had even committed any kind of sins, I believe, is when this phrase is, that time frame that this phrase is discussing, that Yah says.
So it's definitely another one of those we talked about last week. There are certain people that he tells them to destroy, and this is one of those groups of people.
Yeah.
And just tells them to nuke them. And I believe we've about come to the end of the Torah portion of When You Go.
Right. Ki Titzi Fly.
We're week 49. Deuteronomy 21:10 through 25:17. And if you haven't read this week's Torah portion, it's time you did.
Yep. Go read it and give this video a like, subscribe, thumbs up, subscribe so you can get all the follow-up videos that we put out and catch all of our wonderful content.
That's right. And if you want to find Torah portions in a handy place, just Google Sabbath Lounge Torah portions and you'll find all the Torah portions right at your fingertips. It's Torah portions made easy with a little help from our friend Joshua Myers, and he provided the artwork on those pages. But hopefully you can find that useful, and that's why we did it, is so your group can have an easier study.
Right.
But we encourage you to continue to share this and tell other people about Sabbath Lounge. And also I'd encourage you to pray a prayer with us, and that is a prayer for our children and the people that are connected to us and our extended families. And our prayer for children that we know is that they would love Yah more than the world, that they would love and seek Yah the way a deer pants for the water. And so right now at this time in our recording, it's hot and dry in Texas, and it's pretty easy to understand how a deer would pant for water. And that's exactly what we want for our children. We want them to seek him more than they seek the world. And I think if we would all pray that for our children, things would go better in the world.
That's a good point.
So we appreciate you stopping by and listening to Sabbath Lounge. This is Matt
and Jake
signing off.